Okay, it is me, Cgirl294. Today's video is a little more personal in nature. I will also be doing a lot of talking and not have music in between short statements this time. The reasons are 1, it is a more personal video and I've got a lot to say about the topic. 2, I am not sure what type or genre of music would best fit with this particular drawing. Also, 3, if the lack of music is going to bother you, go ahead and click away. That's fine. 4, in some ways, just having a recording of my own voice speeds up my process, and I hopefully can release this video in May 2020. In other ways, it does slow some things down, but I mean, it is a little more streamlined anyway. Plus, I have a lot more to say than can fit in one video anyways. As you may or may not be aware, I'm aroace, meaning I'm aromantic and asexual. That means I don't experience romantic attraction, and I also don't experience sexual attraction. I'm going to include links below so you can find out more information about what those terms mean. I will be talking about my experiences in my journey in discovering those terms today. But since all of this will be from my own personal perspective, it will really help you understand what I'm talking about to look into the terms I'm using before continuing to watch. If you already know what aro and ace mean, feel free to keep watching. If you don't know those terms, go ahead and pause to look into them. Or I guess you can keep watching and then look them up. I prefer to say aro and ace instead of aromantic and asexual. Partly because it is shorter, and partly because if someone has no idea what they mean, they don't make nearly as many negative assumptions for ace as they commonly do for asexual. And of course, aromantic is something even fewer people have heard of from what I've experienced. So when I use the shortened form, only people that know the terms somewhat well will understand what I'm talking about. Plus, the combined term, aro-ace, just rolls off the tongue in a way that aromantic asexual does not. Obviously, some people have heard the terms aro and ace and do not accept us for some reason. However, that is not the point of this drawing, and I'm not going to be talking or dealing directly with other people's reaction to my lack of certain kinds of attraction, only what I felt and experienced. Okay, that was a bit of a ramble, I suppose. Now let's talk about my drawing. I started with drawing an umbrella because they are an interesting shape to draw, and I like how many different kinds of patterns you can put on one. After I started, I realized that these umbrellas would make a nice metaphor to describe how I realized I was not heterosexual nor heteroromantic. The process of me finding the terms, realizing they fit me, and accepting them, romance and sex are not more important than a bunch of other things, and some of y'all forget that. But now I am digressing. Back to the main point, the picture. Okay, so I've written a fair number of words around the umbrellas, but I think they are difficult to read, so I'm going to read over and talk about them. I am planning to basically address each umbrella one at a time and talk about it like it's the final version, even though while I'm talking about it, I'm adding the colors and the words. So, without any further ado, the first umbrella. The one I'm lovingly referring to as my ignorance umbrella. It is the umbrella in the bottom right corner. It represents the time from middle school through high school. I had no clue I was, quote, different, quote, yet still felt isolated. If you asked me, I would have said I was straight, I guess. My biggest feeling was, who cares? I didn't think about sexual orientations much, and I had no idea romantic orientations even existed. I chose the colors I did for the umbrella because having an orange umbrella kind of stands out a lot from the others. I gave it a pink circular shape around it to represent the haze of my ignorance at the time. The final coloring of this umbrella has a little orange sticking out of it, which kinda represents how this umbrella did not fully represent me. The second umbrella is lovingly referred to as my acing it umbrella. It is the umbrella closest to the bottom left corner. It represents the time I was in college and 2 years beyond that. It was about 5 years of time because I finished my bachelor's degree in 3 years, representing 2012 to 2017-ish. I was happy to know that I was different. If you asked me, I would have said I was 100% ace, and romantically, I don't know. My biggest feeling was ace and no thanks. I chose ace pride colors for the umbrella because that was when I figured out I was asexual. I actually first heard the term from my sister who wondered if I was ace. I did a little bit of searching about it and determined that yes, it fit me really well. I really did not think about romantic orientation during this time. If pressured for an answer about it, I would have maybe said IDK or heteroromantic or whatever. The third umbrella is lovingly referred to as my maybe normal adjacent umbrella. It is the umbrella on the right side of the page, kind of close to the middle of the page, and above the ignorance one. It represents the time about 2 years after college to about a year ago, sometime in 2019. It lasted about 3 years or so. I was still clinging to quote-unquote normal. If you asked me, I would have said I was ace and arospec. I tried on a variety of romantic labels under arospec, primarily using gray aromantic because I was mostly confused about it. My biggest feeling was, I'm arospec and ace, that makes sense. Y'all have fun, I guess. I chose ace colors and arrow colors because this was the first time I was allowing myself to really consider my romantic attraction, even though it scared me a little, and I did not want to commit to anything really. You may have noticed I colored the tippy top of the umbrella green and purple and then gray on top. I also intentionally left a part of the umbrella white between the ace pride colors and arrow pride colors. I made those choices because I had so many questions and confusions about romance. My last umbrella is lovingly referred to as my acceptance umbrella. It is the umbrella on the top left part of the page. It represents the time of less than a year. It represents the time in 2019 until now, which at the time of recording is 2020. I have no time to waste on normal. If you ask me, I will tell you that I'm aromantic and asexual, and tell you to Google it, pal. My biggest feeling is, hey, why can't we talk about it more? Why did it take so long to figure it out? We need more rep. I chose to represent aroace colors in both stripes on the left of the umbrella and hearts on the right side, because my understanding and acceptance of myself is more complex. I love hearts, and I love love. What I don't experience or fully understand is sexual attraction nor romantic attraction. I recently came to accept that I am aromantic. I am aro. I have not, to the best of my knowledge, ever experienced romantic or sexual attraction. I am somewhat upset that it took so long for me to know what aromantic meant and what asexual meant. I wish we had more representation. It would have greatly helped me out earlier in life to know that I was normal. I haven't ever really wanted a romantic or sexual relationship with anyone. And you know what? That is perfectly okay. That too is normal. I really want more ace and more arrow ace representation, so that other people like me do not have to feel so left out, different, broken, or weirded out. Unlike other identities, which can sometimes be implied, arrow ace and arrow ace identities usually need to be spelled out. I mean, I have so many headcanons about characters who are arrow spec, ace spec, and or arrow ace. However, in reality, I do want more explicitly arrow ace characters. Anyway, back to my art. I drew the umbrellas first and then thought that represents how I feel about myself and my arrow ace self. I wanted to also represent what I think about other people's attractions. The blue hearts represent times I knew a male flirted at me. Wait, my sister says people flirt with each other. Well, I guess. But I think people flirting at me is more accurate, even if not correct grammar. The closer the heart is to one of my umbrellas, the more obvious it was to me later, or at the time, that there was a desire on the other person's part. The pink hearts represent times it was a woman. The brown, light, and dark represent times it was pointed out to me way after the fact, and or it was a stranger or vague acquaintance. Each pencil heart with a question mark represents the times I'm sure flirting is happening, based on what other people have told me about how often it occurs. I'm using the penciled-in hearts to represent flirting directed towards me, and flirting by and towards other people. The blue, pink, and brown hearts are closest to the umbrella, which roughly estimates the time period in which the incident or incidents occurred. Yes, there are a larger number of hearts near the umbrella of middle and high school. In general, I've been told I give off anti-dating vibes. That is, people get the impression I'm not interested in them whatsoever. Sometime during high school, I started giving off this feeling more strongly, I suppose. I'm happy about that because I do not care if I ever date anyone or not. Okay. And I do feel like it would be good for me to add in real quick here, as I'm progressing on the drawing. I have experienced squishes and swishes. If you don't know what those are, what they mean, let me quickly explain. A squish is basically a platonic equivalent to a crush. In other words, an aromantic feeling of intense desire to be in a platonic relationship with someone. A swish is basically an aesthetic equivalent to a crush. It's an intense feeling of aesthetic attraction to someone. Usually for me, it's devoid of platonic desire. I am aroace, as I mentioned, so I've never had a crush or been in love the way you allo-romantic, allosexual people mean it. However, I've had quite a number of squishes in my life, and a few swishes as well. Of course, that isn't to say I've never had a squish and a swish on the same person. That has happened before, but for me it is rarer than just a swish or just a squish. Actually, funny story, when I realized people weren't just joking about celebrity crushes, I was more picturing in my head a swish or aesthetic attraction. In all fairness to me, most celebrities spend a lot of time and money on their physical appearance, so it even makes sense. I'm not saying people don't find them aesthetically attractive, of course, but obviously for a lot of people there is a romantic and or sexual element to them as well. I have never felt romantic or sexual attraction. I tend to feel platonic attraction strongly and sometimes feel aesthetic attraction. I may have felt sensual attraction in a purely non-sexual way, maybe? I'm not sure. if I have experienced sensual, non-sexual, non-romantic desires, it would be for things like hugs, high fives, and aroace cuddling, which would probably more resemble just sitting next to someone, maybe some physical closeness that looks strange from the outside, like my sister, close friends, my dogs even. I'm a somewhat touchy-feely person, but I tend to prefer a close emotional relationship first, and then maybe some non-romantic things like holding hands, high fives, sitting together, or even just chilling in the same room, each doing our own thing. Anyways, I feel like I've probably been rambling for a while about that, and now I want to get back to my drawing. Now about the design of each umbrella. I was honestly not originally thinking of each period of my life when drawing them, but it ended up working out well to describe certain periods of my life. The simplest umbrella, of course, fits well during the time of my life that I really did not think about sexual or romantic orientations. I did not realize it mattered so much. The first ace representing umbrella shows a period I was growing to understand myself, but in some ways, I was more understanding of allosexuals. I understood that I did not feel attraction even before I had the words for it. I just did not know that you allosexuals did feel that. It is a simple-ish umbrella, taking up more room as I realized how important that aspect of my life was going to be moving forward. I was sort of timid about my asexuality to most people, but boldly open for internal exploration, and did talk to some of my close friends and family about it at the time. The third umbrella has little hanging down parts on each side, and it sort of represents that I was not seeking out a lot of new information. I basically took comfort in the idea of being on the aromantic spectrum, or gray aromantic, or some such, and did not want to explore it much or look deeper. I was deeply conflicted because I was sure I had a crush one time, although looking back now, I think that was probably a squish and a swish combined. In any case, I kept clinging to whatever I thought normal meant. The fourth umbrella, which stands for a recent event until now in my life, is when I decided internally to fully shed the desire to have a quote-unquote normal life. From the moment I decided to get an arrow ring, to match my ace one, until right now, I started living just a little more confident in myself. Now from the outside, the third and fourth umbrellas might look similar, especially when folded up. But wait, I think I'm losing my metaphor here. Whatever. My point being, recently I've become much more bold, online anyway, in talking about being aroace and bringing up a lack of representation. I truly believe it took me so long to hear the term asexual and even longer to hear aromantic because we lack proper and authentic representation of either, and especially of someone who is both. It makes me really wonder if I had first heard the terms when I was in high school, would I have come to understand myself and other people a little sooner? I really cannot say. I am a very stubborn person, and I think it would have taken a while to accept that I'm aroace no matter what. But I do think it would have been a lot better for me and others around me if I'd come to understand what being allosexual and alloromantic was a lot earlier in my life. I clung tightly to the label of ace for so long, not really allowing myself to consider being aro too, because our culture, mainstream American culture, is so insistent that people need to form sexual and or romantic relationships. I can't speak to the experience of alloromantic aces or allosexual aros, of course, but I imagine that must be even harder in some ways for them to understand and accept than realizing I'm aroace was for me. And let's be honest, I was about 8 years from first hearing the term asexual to accepting that I'm aromantic and asexual. And yes, if you did not notice, I am wearing a white ring on my left middle finger and a black ring on my right middle finger to represent my aro and ace identities respectively. And looking back, middle school and high school was a strange time for me because I did not really know what other people were experiencing, that the attraction from the media was not all fake. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this rambling, long-winded video. Please do leave a comment, like, subscribe, share it, all the jazz you are used to people saying on YouTube. I'm not really trying to make money off this at the moment. I would like to spread a little joy in this world. Also, please remember to be kind to yourself and other people.